Buckle up, Buttercup, because today's video is all about the first time working Penny after giving her about a week to settle into the new barn, and clearly she was feeling herself. This whole bit of zoomies lasted for a good 10 minutes, and for a lot of it, I stood there and waited for her and the dusty arena to settle. Especially working with a young horse, I feel it's really important to let them play if they want to play, to cater to their sense of curiosity. We're asking them to work with our schedule and our time constraints, so it doesn't hurt to give them a few minutes to run and buck if they feel like it. Even if she were on a lunge line, I'm okay with her bucking while on it. That's her way of getting her excess energy out and, in a way, allowing her to become more attentive when she's ready. She continued to run and play for a while, came up to sniff me, and trotted off once more. And I let her take her time, the only guide being that she wasn't to turn away from me. She was allowed to switch directions if she deemed necessary, but only if she was turning into me to do it. She would break to a walk for a while, sniff the ground, investigate whatever it was she would find in the back corner, spook at the sign that's been hanging up in the arena the whole time, but I didn't feel as if I couldn't call her back to me if I needed to. She checked out my tripod once, to which I chased her out of the corner for, and she did a half circle before coming back to me in the center. She said a quick hello before we began our session working at Liberty. By the way, if you're new here, hello, welcome. My name is Shay, and on this channel I post about my two horses, Sage, my paint mare, and Penny, my Mustang filly who I'm working with today, as well as horsey educational videos. If you'd like to follow along, feel free to hit the subscribe button as well as that little notification bell. To continue with where we were, the first thing I'm doing is asking her to back away from me. My typical cue from the ground is raising one or both of my whips with the handles up to the sky and the ends pointing down, along with a clear vocal cue, back. I try to avoid repeating the word over and over and rely on my hand and body language before stating it again. Since this was the first session back, I didn't want to focus on perfection, but her intentions. What was she trying to offer me? Was it matching what I visualized? Was I making it clear enough as to what I wanted to communicate to her? In this clip, I wasn't being clear enough. I normally stand in front of her, and instead I was standing next to her. This led to some confusion on her part, wondering if my cue was for a side pass towards me or even the beginning of a spin. I figured she still had some pent-up energy, so I began free lunging her, essentially round penning without the round pen. After a couple laps, I asked for a stop and she immediately came into me. Giving her a brief moment of praise and pause, I asked her once again for the back, to which she was a little hesitant on, but with a swing of the whip and another vocal cue, she took those few steps back. I began to move her out again at an easy trot, but she got a little stuck in the back corner. I noticed her beginning to turn to the outside and begun to correct, but was a little too late in my asking. She responded with a buck and kick out, but again I viewed it as an exertion of energy rather than any threat towards me. I asked for a couple laps at the lope before getting her to stop and come into me once more. After a short discussion with my barn owner, we went back into work, once again working on free lunging with stops and backing. Despite a less responsive stop than I would like, as well as a super crooked backup, I accepted the effort she gave me and gave her another moment of pause in response. I'd asked her to trot up with me, and I could see now why she decided to keep trotting. Firstly, the window in the arena is a huge distraction, one we're still working to get past, but mostly I see the issue in my own body language when I'd ask for a stop. I didn't lean back like I normally would, and I was pretty abrupt, leading her to keep moving past me. In the moment, I saw this as a brief disconnect of communication, so I'd asked her to continue lunging. And while I appreciate the nice stop, it wasn't something I asked for, so I changed the direction we were lunging in, allowing her to still be able to move out without putting too much pressure on her. Penny has become pretty good at stopping since it's something I was pretty strict on from the get-go. The turn of my shoulders and a quick whoa is all the cue that she should need to come to a full stop. I really appreciated how clear this clip was, with one simple back and Penny taking fairly quick steps backwards to do what I asked. I began doing a little bit of follow the leader to see how well she would keep with me. Ideally, I'd like to be able to see her nose in line with my shoulder, but staying close behind my back is progress as long as she's keeping her feet moving along with mine. I'd also prefer a little faster responsiveness, but it wasn't something we had done in a while. Her backup was much straighter this time, so I made sure to reinforce that with a Timothy pellet.
Let's settle it back down, dude. Can we settle it back down to a normal level. I know it's dusty because you're still.
This stop was done absolutely wonderful. Once stopped, I had turned slightly to my left and Penny managed to yield her hindquarters in just the slightest movement to be able to remain lined up with my body. We both stood there for a moment, allowing what she did to really sink in. Then I asked for something new. I was curious if she would back, still with lifting my hand but not facing her. She lifted her head and started to shift backwards, but she still wasn't totally sure until I faced her once again. When I asked her to stop, she began moving forwards again, so I reiterated the halt with another backup. Once she stood quietly, I reinforced again by stepping into her with a pellet. My goal with this cue is to have her nose stay between my whips. She tends to be a little slow when I ask for this, hence why I increase the pressure from my clucking, but as soon as she trots, I praise and have her stop and back. She really began to pick up on moving closer to me, so after turning, I stopped again to be able to praise. Eventually, I would love for her to stay in between my whips from the very beginning and not be lagging behind. While this was a slightly different position, she still turned fairly sharp and was able to stay near me. I didn't ask very clearly right off the bat for this maneuver, which is why she wasn't planting the correct foot for a forehand turn, but when she eventually got it for a few steps, I stopped asking for the pivot and praised before switching to the other side for the same turn. This one started much clearer, so I didn't ask for a full turn, but praised after a few steps. Penny was very excited about offering the side pass and was quickly catching up to me with her shoulders, but I wanted her rear end to be even. However, going the other direction was much better and had great crossovers, despite lagging just a touch in her hind end. This was a clip I felt important to leave in, showing that sometimes the horse will still miss cues. Watching back now, I could see Penny begin to turn her head to the side, and that sent her into a spin instead of back up like I had asked. I let her finish the maneuver, essentially resetting before asking again for the backup, this time achieving a much more fluid motion. When she got a little stuck, I repeated the cue, to which she responded with a few more steps and a quiet halt before I walked up with a pellet. She began to step forward, so I reiterated the backup, which was a little wobbly before I cued her to move forward into the triangle with my whips. When she gives those little head shakes, it can be a sign of frustration and sometimes playfulness, so I try to move on to something she knows pretty well. When my whip is pointed out to the side like this, I'm asking her to stay up next to me, whether at the walk or the trot, but shifting to me moving backwards was a little new for her, and she got it spot on, even though she had a little bobble. We switched to the other hand, leading her into the other direction, and she still came straight into me when I moved backwards. I don't ever want to discourage my horses from their playful sides, so I stopped asking for specific maneuvers and asked her to begin a short game of tag. Her little head shakes and hops were so much fun to watch and engage with as I ran around the arena and she stomped her way after me. None of this was formal, but it was enjoyable not only for myself but Penny as well. I slowed it back down, mostly for myself and lack of cardio, but she was closer to my shoulder, staying with me even when I pushed into her a little more. When I quickly dodged the other direction, she gave me this little hop, which I really wanted to reiterate the momentum and quick energy shift she gave me.
You're exhausting. You are. You're exhausting.
I try not to ask for this maneuver all the time because she tends to repeat it out of her own enjoyment, but I like to ask every once in a while just to confirm she still knows the cue. However, today she decided to repeat it instead of backing. Like we did before, I waited for her to finish before resetting and asking for the backup again. By this time, I think we had been working for about 15 minutes and you could see Penny was starting to get a little frazzled. She was anticipating what I was asking and trying to do things on her own instead of looking for my guidance. I decided to back away, getting her to line up straight before asking clearly for the backup. I stepped into her, adding a little more pressure as this isn't something I would do for the spin or side pass. When she had a couple steps, I stopped moving but continued asking for the backup to reiterate that she needed to move without me. One of the last things we did was going back to following the whip. I noticed her switch to my other side, but I simply switched hands to match what she was doing. She was a little excited about the fast turn, but I loved that she came into me so quickly instead of wandering off or lagging behind. So even though she had the tiniest of rears, I still gave her a pellet. She was really starting to understand the fast change of direction, so I asked her once more, and even though she slowed down a touch, she still trotted into me, so I gave her a quick release and praise. The last thing I wanted to test was her pickup. We've been working a long time on side passing towards me, and she recently has been able to pick me up from the mounting block at Liberty. She tends to get a little stuck when she thinks she's close enough, but I've begun asking her to just get a little bit closer, and she did phenomenal with it today, waiting for me to get down from the mounting block before she received a pellet.
Good girl. Just like good. Try to smile. Let me see. Wiggle it, smile. Alright everyone, that is it for today's video. This was our first day back after like a week and a half of not working the girls, letting them really settle in to their new place. I think they're finally getting real settled, so hopefully we'll get back into some regular videos. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment down below. See you in next week's video. Bye guys. Smile. Smile. Good girl. Just a little bit.